Episode number 221, Blade Dimension, I. 221, Blade Dimension, I. The battle between Cain, Antony, William, and the seven Essence Wave Warriors against the Lightning Lupus lasted over half an hour and leveled everything around them. Deep wounds were all over the Lightning Lupus, with parts of its body covered in a layer of frost, but the humans were not any better. Cain's left arm was broken, and so was Antony's right leg, and there was a large cut on William's chest as a claw strike managed to pierce his armor and reach his skin.
Boom.
A shock wave echoed across the battlefield as a fist bathed in blood lightning collided with a lightning claw. Cain's eyes narrowed as he felt the bones on his wrist and shoulder about to snap, but he resisted long enough until a light spear collided in the Lightning Lupus left ribs. The light spear pushed the Peak Wave champion beast away with a bloody hole in its chest, and just as it turned toward the shining young man in the air, a barrage of spells came at it. The beast had no problem dodging those spells, but allowed Antony to fire light arrows that forced it to pull back. It took all of the Lightning Lupus focus to dodge those arrows, which is why it did not notice William appear right behind it. An ice armor that covered William burst with cold energy the instant he tackled the Peak Wave champion beast.
Oh,
The Lightning Lupus yelled in pain as the tackle sent it flying away, and things were not over. While the beast was in midair, Cain jumped toward it and fired a ferocious right hook to its head.
crack.
The sound of bones cracking emerged from the Lightning Lupus, skull as that blow sent it crashing into the ground. Antony, William, and the seven Essence Wave cultivators smiled when they heard that sound, since it meant that the damage to the Lightning Lupus had reached a critical point. None of the soldiers wanted to lose that chance, and they flashed at full speed toward the crashing zone as they made their wave explode, and were ready to unleash their mighty's attacks on the wounded Peak Wave champion beast.
Go away.
The soldiers were around 50 meters away from the Lightning Lupus, a perfect distance to fire their spells when they heard Cain's voice, and the next thing they saw was a blast of lightning. Powerful arcs of lightning spread in every direction from inside the Lightning Lupus, instantly covering a radius of 40 meters. The second they heard Cain's voice, the soldiers stopped advancing, saving themselves from the blast, but their instinct screamed danger as the lightning arcs began to spread out even further at blinding speed and with outrageous strength. All the soldiers immediately ran away from the Lightning Lupus, but the lightning arcs were so fast that it caught one of them in a second, and everybody saw how it vaporized his body, killing him on the spot. The lightning arcs grew even stronger after killing that soldier and continued spreading. Just as another of the Essence Wave cultivators was about to get caught, Cain appeared in front of this one and put his arms forward as he formed a shield with his blood lightning. Awe appeared in the hearts of the Essence Wave cultivators as they saw Cain holding back the wave of blue lightning arcs. It was like a man stopping the might of a tsunami on his own. Cain's bloodline granted him resistance to lightning, and his blood lightning was of higher quality than the blue lightning, but the power of the Lightning Lupus was too great. His entire body trembled, and burn marks spread across his skin as he held the lightning wave. An overwhelming killing intent appeared in the Lightning Lupus as it saw Cain holding its attack back, but as it intended to paw even more of its life wave into the blue lightning, its body shook and puked a mouthful of blood. The arcs of blue lightning vanished since the Lightning Lupus could not hold the attack any longer due to the severe internal damage, not to mention that the technique consumed its blood vitality in order to unleash its full power. Cain nearly fell to the ground once he no longer had to resist the wave of blue lightning arcs, but was able to stand still as he focused on the Peak Wave champion beast and the terrain around them. The wave of lightning arcs had melted the ground around them, making it seem they were fighting on top of a volcano. That was lightning rage. It was supposed to be a technique a Lightning Lupus obtained after becoming a king beast, but this one managed to unleash it at Peak Wave champion by using its blood vitality as a catalyst. Cain had already learned all he needed from his enemy, which is why he was able to react so fast to the Lightning Lupus attack. It would be a lie to say that the attack did not surprise him, but he knew it would not happen again, and it was their chance to end this battle.
Attack.
Just like the soldiers did not hesitate to follow Cain's command when this one told them to pull back. The instant they heard the order to fight, They made their wave explode with all the power left in their bodies and flashed back into the fray. The lightning lupus was not going just to resign itself to its death, and made its life wave burst one last time as it charged toward the humans, full of killing intent. Cain and William took the front, while Antony and the remaining 6 Essence Wave cultivators unleashed their most powerful spells against the peak wave champion beast.
Zboom. Zboom. Zboom.
Explosions echoed across the melted battlefield as the 9 soldiers clashed against the peak wave champion beast, slowly draining the life of the beast one attack at a time. Cain saw how the lightning lupus flashed at him with its maws open, aiming at his neck. His eyes grew sharp as a cold light appeared in them, and he dodged those fangs at the last second before sending a right punch toward the beast's throat. It's over. That punch pushed the lightning lupus back, and while it could remain standing, it could no longer breathe and was drowning with its own blood. Fear appeared in the eyes of the beast as it saw the young man bathed in blood lightning walking forward, and the idea of running away appeared in its mind. Cain saw that, but he was not worried. The peak wave champion beast was fast, but received too much damage during this battle and would not be able to run from him and Antony.
Time to end this.
The battle had been hard and truly pushed Cain and the rest of the soldiers beyond their limit, so he would not play around with the lightning lupus and would grant it a respectful death. Cain clenched his fists as he channeled all his strength in it and was ready to flash forward when it happened.
Rumbles.
The ground beneath his feet began to tremble and did not limit itself to a small area. An earthquake covered the entire Blade Mountain. Cain's eyes widened as he was shocked by the sudden turn of events. The Godslayer Humankind Empire's technology was incredibly advanced and was able to predict things like earthquakes with 100% certainty, but there was no such report regarding Blade Mountain.
Rumbles.
The earthquake grew even more powerful, generating massive crevices all across Blade Mountain, and just as things seemed they could not get any more wild, the mountain peak shattered as a giant beam of energy rose into the sky.
BOOMMMs.
The energy beam seemed to have clashed with an invisible wall in the sky, and giant cracks appeared before collapsing, leaving behind a 10,000-meter large portal. Cain's mind froze for a second as he saw that gargantuan portal in the sky.
GOs.
Apex's voice echoed inside Cain's mind, making a burst of red light emerge from his eyes as he clenched his teeth and ran up the mountain. Cain was the first, but was not the only one, as all wave champion beasts began to run toward the portal, forgetting about their fights. Soldiers and students were shocked to see that even those dying wave champion beasts moved toward the portal as if a force they could not resist compelled them to go. Most people were confused and shocked by the portal, but Dominic and Amos understood what it meant, and a ferocious greed emerged from their hearts as they forgot about everything else and prepared to flash forward. However, Dominic stopped at the last second, and a sharp light appeared in his eyes as he flashed toward the student encampment. When they saw Cain and Amos dashing toward the portal, everybody understood that whatever was on the other side would be amazing. Current schedule, 7 chapters a week, 1/7. Bonus chapters. Over 400 Power Stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 Power Stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1,200 Power Stones, 3 extra chapters. Redson World. Creators thought. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 222, Blade Dimension. 222 Blade Dimension. Aye. Cain's body burst with blood lightning as he pushed forward, using the last shred of energy left in his body to reach the massive portal in the sky. Although his eyes remained in the portal, his ego wave had silently spread around, showing him the actions of humans and beasts. Cain saw how Amos unleashed blasts from the bottom of his feet in order to impulse his body forward, and he was not alone since all the soldiers and students were also making their way to the portal. The behavior of soldiers and students made sense, but Cain could not help but frown as he saw the way the wave champion beasts were acting. Every beast in the entire Blade Mountain began to run toward the portal as if their life depended on it. The way those beasts acted was as if they were under the control of powerful hypnosis, and they would not hesitate to give their life in order to fulfill the command implanted in their mind, which was to enter the portal. That was already weird enough, and what came next shocked everybody as a gravitational pulse emerged from the portal and covered the entire Blade Mountain. Cain felt that force went through his body and did nothing to him or the other humans, but it affected the wave champion beasts, raising them from the ground and driving them into the portal. Some of those wave champion beasts weighed over 30 tons, but the gravitational force raised them as if they were feathers and drove them into the portal at a shocking speed. The captains and university teachers were watching the state of Blade Mountain using the devices in their respective star cruisers, and what they saw was a picture that came from Legends. Hundreds of humans were rising to the mountain peak to reach a massive 10,000-meter lodge portal that was currently sucking hundreds of wave champion beasts. Cain ran at full speed, but he saw how the others were closing in, and there was not much energy left in him since the battle with the lightning lupus left him exhausted. However, he was unwilling to allow anyone, whether a soldier or student, to rush past him. A decisive light appeared in Cain's eyes as he channeled what little astral wave was left inside him into his feet and jumped with all his strength. Amos, Antony, and William saw how Cain jumped to the sky, and they did not understand what he sought to achieve. There was no way he could have mastered air walk as a level 7 wave warrior, and even if it did, that was not faster than climbing the mountain. However, the trio then saw how Cain landed on the back of one of the wave champion beasts that the portal's gravitational force pulled from the ground, and they understood the plan of this one. Cain wanted to use the wave champion beasts as stepping stones in order to reach the portal faster. If that was not a high enough display of wisdom and ingenuity, what happened next reached the peak. Cain had just landed on one of the beasts as he buried his hands on its back. Ah!
The wave champion beast screamed in pain when that hand pierced its back and reached its heart, but its eyes did not leave the portal in the sky. Cain devoured a burst of blood essence that he transformed into blood energy to enhance his leg's power and jump toward the next beast.
Boom!
There was so much strength in Cain's jump that he generated a small shock wave, and everybody saw how he raised to the sky at a speed that not even wave champions could equal. Amos, William, and Antony saw that, but although their feelings toward Cain differed, the trio admitted that his ingenuity was superb. They noticed that some sought to emulate Cain's actions and shook their heads. Carl jumped toward one of the floating wave champion beasts and nearly fell. Standing on top of the beast was incredibly complicated, as this one was constantly shaking, and trying to get a stable base from which to jump was nearly impossible. Cain could stand on top of the beast's back without a problem because of his superb control over his body. As for jumping, his ego wave showed him every corner of the beast, revealing to him where to kick.
Boom!
A small blast echoed across the mountain when one of the people that attempted to copy Cain fell from the wave beast and crashed into the ground. Cain heard that blast but did bother to look at those dumb enough to use the wave champion beasts as literal stepping stones without the body control needed to actually remain on top of them. There was a wave crystal in his mouth that he used to recover some of his astral wave while rising. Every time he attacked one of the wave champion beasts, he would use a small portion of the blood essence to recover some of his stamina. He was getting closer and closer to the portal, and a sharp light appeared in his eyes as he finally reached the massive phenomenon that covered the sky above Blade Mountain. It was even more majestic up close and swallowed those giant wave champion beasts as if they were candy. Cain had no idea what was on the other side of the portal, but he had read of such majestic events taking place across history, and all of them were associated with massive lucky chances.
Don't you dare to get in.
That booming voice appeared in the sky just as Cain was about to rise into the dimension. All the soldiers and students turned to the origin and saw a figure in the distance flashing in their direction at a shocking speed. He was a middle-aged man with short dark hair, and a powerful blast of flames emerged from the soil of his feet, allowing his body to move at a supersonic speed, generating one sonic boom after another. The man was too far away to discern much from him, but those flames and the speed at which his body moved tell everybody two things. He was much more powerful than a peak wave champion and was likely connected to Hellblazer University. Amos showed a mixture of surprise and happiness when he saw that. He recognized the middle-aged man as one of the elders of the Hellblazer family, but had no idea this one was in the vicinity. It was not just a coincidence that an elder from the Hellblazer family would be here. The group from Hellblazer University had several geniuses with great potential, and there was no way a noble family would leave them unprotected. Normally, these powerhouses would remain hidden to give the illusion to the geniuses that they were in real danger and stimulate their potential. Still, the emergence of the portal in the sky made the middle-aged man's heart explode with greed. He wanted whatever was on the other side for him and would not allow a bunch of brats to get in his way. In the middle-aged man's mind, there was no way Kane would ignore his word, allowing him to be the first to enter the portal, but that only proved how little he knew the young man.
HMPH.
Kane sneered before jumping from the back of the beast, vanishing inside the portal. The crash sent the middle-aged man stumbling back, but he was able to regain control of his body extremely fast before focusing on the portal in the sky. This one seemed to have generated an invisible force field around Blade Mountain, limiting certain people's passage. 21:17. The middle-aged man had lived for a long time and knew that this type of dimension seemed to prefer young people full of potential and disdained old geezers like him who had already reached their growth limit.
You dare.
The eyes of the elder from the Hellblazer family burst with rage when he saw how a mere wave warrior dared to ignore his words, and the jet of flames coming from his feet grew even stronger, improving the speed at which he approached the portal.
Boom.
An explosion echoed across the sky when the middle-aged man seemed to have crashed against an invisible wall surrounding Blade Mountain. The crash sent the middle-aged man stumbling back, but he was able to regain control of his body extremely fast before focusing on the portal in the sky. This one seemed to have generated an invisible force field around Blade Mountain, limiting certain people's passage. The middle-aged man had lived for a long time and knew that this type of dimension seemed to prefer young people full of potential and disdained old geezers like him who had already reached their growth limit.
You cannot stop me.
Most people in his position would have given up, but the elder from the Hellblazer family was unwilling. People think that a wave king was a great monarch, and they were right most of the time, but there were cases when they only worked as glorified babysitters. That was the case of the middle-aged man, which is why he was ready to burn everything in his path in order to enter that dimension.
Boom. Flames emerged from the middle-aged man's body as he prepared to force his way in. His actions might harm the young people inside Blade Mountain, but he couldn't care less. Current schedule, 7 chapters a week. 2/7. Bonus chapters. Over 400 Power Stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 Power Stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1,200 Power Stones, 3 extra chapters. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 223, Blade Dimension, EI. 223 Blade Dimension, III.
Hellblazer burst.
The flames covering the elder glowed with a red light as if blood was being used as fuel. He then flashed forward like a meteorite toward the invisible force field, ready to blast a hole through it. Fear appeared in the hearts of the soldiers and students on the mountain when they saw that. Even the dumbest of them understood that the clash between the elder and the force field would generate a rain of fire that would fall on them. A crazy light appeared in the elder's eyes as the idea of obtaining the treasure on the other side of the portal appeared in his mind. Just as he was about to clash with the force field, a figure appeared in front of him and grabbed his neck.
Boom.
The clash between the elder and the unknown figure generated a blast of flames, but giant streams of water emerged from the body of the first and instantly extinguished them. Shock and fear appeared in the elder's heart when the hand tightened around his neck. He saw the blue light in the eyes of the other person, and any idea of fighting back vanished from his mind. The man who managed to stop the Hellblazer elder was a legendary figure in the soldiers' hearts, and someone's scions were always one to stay away. Zarak stared at the Hellblazer elder with coldness. He put more and more power on his left hand, suffocating the middle-aged man before using his right fist to punch this one right in the chest.
Oh,
The elder unleashed a cry of pain as blood and pieces of his internal organs emerged from his mouth. And things were far from over, since Zarak was not satisfied with a single blow.
Zboom. Zboom. Zboom.
Every blow of Zarak on the Elder had so much power that shock waves spread across the sky. After the fifth blow, and seeing how the middle-aged man was about to fall unconscious, he unleashed one final punch with all his strength. Zarak's punch sent the Elder flying away, making him dive thousands of meters before crashing into the ground. Soldiers and students saw how the Elder generated a massive crater upon impact and did not know whether he was alive or not, but they did not care either. Even the Scions of the Hellblazer University did not care, since the Elder's actions almost put their life in danger. Just as they wondered what would happen next, they saw an incredibly powerful blue ego wave emerge from Zarak and clash against the invisible force field covering Blade Mountain. Unlike the Hellblazer Elder, who acted rashly and unleashed more power than he could control, Zarak displayed absolute dominion over his ego wave. The blue ego wave spread across the force field, trying to find a way in, and when it found there wasn't one, Zarak extended his palm and began to squeeze. The ego wave mimicked its master and squeezed around the force field, trying to break it.
Rumbled.
The force field trembled under the ego wave's pressure, but remained firm despite Zarak exerting enough power to crush a small mountain. Zarak retracted his ego wave after a few seconds, since it was clear that the force field protecting the Blade Mountain had more than enough power to stop him. A figure covered in shadows appeared next to Zarak, glancing at the portal with a profound gaze.
So this is the reason you say we should remain nearby.
Zarak glanced at Jonathan before looking back at the portal in the sky. Although his cultivation was higher, Jonathan was an essence wave cultivator and mastered the law of shadows, which allowed this one to perceive disturbance in space.
I felt the presence of a strong dimensional force for a moment during our battle against Bloodless 4. Still, I never expected that it would be something like this.
Seeing such a fantastic phenomenon in the sky filled Jonathan's heart with awe, and part of him wanted to enter it, but he was not as foolish as the Hellblazer Elder.
It might be due to the presence of youths full of great potential or just coincidence. In any case, it rejects people like us. I will send the information to the Imperial Lightning Fort. What will you do?
Zarak would have wanted to silence any information about the portal in the sky, but that was not possible, and he knew that powerful individuals would come to this place very soon. He was strong, but the portal above Blade Mountain would incite greed in people whose power stood way above the Wave King rank. Jonathan stared at the portal for a few seconds before softly shaking his head.
The sphere of influence from the Egon family does not spread into Blade Mountain. I will inform my superior when I am back.
Zarak turned toward Jonathan, and a grateful light appeared in his eyes as he softly nodded. The fewer powerful organizations meddled in this place, the easier it would be for the Imperial Lightning Fort to establish control.
That brat was the first to enter. Considering Kane's will and talent, he may reach the highest stage of that dimension. That place holds power that vastly surpasses Wave King's. Do you think he will be fine?
Zarak could not help but adopt a solemn expression when he heard that. Kane was extremely talented, but the dangers inside that dimension would push him to the limit, and if he ascended high enough, the sun's heat could melt his wings and make him fall into oblivion.
There is no point in wasting my time thinking about what could happen. I can only prepare for the time when he emerges from the dimension.
Jonathan understood the last part of Zarak's words. If Kane managed to obtain a great fortune inside that dimension, many powerhouses could try and take it away from him.
I will you and that boy Fortune. I will be leaving now. It was a pleasure fighting by your side.
Jonathan clasped his hands and performed a small bow toward Zarak before transforming into streams of shadows that faded in the sky. Zarak also clasped his hands at the fading shadows before adopting a meditative position in the sky and looking at the portal one last time before closing his eyes. After crossing the portal, Kane found himself in a dark dimension full of shining dots of light in the distance. It was like a starry, dark sky, and he was at the center of it. Just as he wondered what he was supposed to do, an immense pain assaulted him as streams of blood, astral wave, and even ego wave emerged from inside his body and began to amass in front of him.
Dada.
Kane shouted as the agony was unbearable, and if it was not for his willpower, he might have lost consciousness. More and more of those three essences emerged from Cain, generating a bigger and bigger cocoon in front of him. The process lasted for around 20 seconds. Cain fell to the ground and was having difficulty breathing as that unbearable pain was still clear in his mind. Luckily, the next second, the dots of light began to unleash streams of shining energy that flooded his body and the large blood cocoon in front of him. A sense of shock and awe appeared in Cain's eyes when he noticed how that shining light took less than 3 minutes to completely heal his body and regenerate all that the cocoon had taken from him. This shining light, it is stronger and more pure than any other energy I have used before. Cain did not lose this opportunity and adopted a meditative position, trying to mobilize that shining light to cultivate. The shining light posed no resistance, and Cain felt how it nurtured his flesh and blood, strengthened his meridians, and tempered his astral wave. As the starry light improved his cultivation and foundation, Cain focused on the blood cocoon that wantonly devoured it. Although whatever was inside was certainly essential for this place, there was nothing he could do about it other than wait. Cyan did not hesitate before activating embryonic breathing in order to push his cultivation speed to a new level. He stood like that for over an hour before opening his eyes since the starry light faded.
Thumpy.
Just as the starry sky stopped nurturing him, a heartbeat emerged from the blood cocoon, and it was the first of many.
Thumpy. Thumpy. Thumpy.
Cain noticed as the heartbeats grew faster and more powerful as cracks emerged on the blood cocoon. It did not take long for the blood cocoon to shatter to pieces, and what appeared in front of Cain was a sword, more specifically, a machete. The weapon was not very long or wide and had a red handle with a thin chain. Cain stared at the weapon for a moment and felt as if it was part of him, which, taking into consideration its component, it was. Current schedule: 7 chapters a week. 3/7. Bonus chapters. Over 400 power stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 power stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1,200 power stones, 3 extra chapters. Redson World. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 224, Sod Monster. 224, Sod Monster. Cain opened his palm, and the machete instantly flew to him. At the moment it was in his grasp, he teleported out of the dimension full of starry light. He appeared in a forest packed full of giant trees that rose over 1,000 meters, with crowns so large that they covered the sky. However, what truly mattered was the immense weakness that assaulted him.
System.
Appearing in an unknown place and having most of his strength gone was not a good combination, so Cain immediately commanded the absolute life form system to scan the surroundings and check the state of his body. Like always, the faithful system gave Cain an answer. Analyzing. Basic scan force field works without any problem. No life forms are near vessels. Unknown force invaded vessel's body, weakening body and energy pool to the standard of a level 1 wave warrior. Searching for a counter against weakening force. There are possible solutions, but they will require time for the system to provide them. Permission to use the full power of the system in the task. Cain did not immediately answer the system. Now that he knew there was no immediate danger, he took a moment to analyze his surroundings and talk with the one who incited him into this place.
Apex, do you have any specific information regarding this dimension?
Cain was not illiterate regarding the type of phenomenon, like the portal above Blade Mountain. Although his knowledge was shallow, he knew there were times when special dimensions would spontaneously open and were the key to unique inheritances. Those inheritances may have been left behind for an ancient powerhouse or generated by the world. The second was rarer and also much more valuable, coming into existence once a specific place's laws and natural power reached a zenith. 21:17. Apex constantly gathered information about the Gaia continent and the world as a whole, so Cain hoped this one would have an answer for him.
There are records of Blade Mountain showing signs of possibly birthing an inheritance, but those were primarily based on gossip, so I cannot be sure. Either way, this place is special, and you might find a lucky chance.
Unfortunately for Kane, Apex did not have the answer he sought. He sighed, but there was not much he could do about it.
Apex, work with the system to find an answer to this weakness. Okay.
The system's spirit knew that while the dimension could contain a massive lucky chance, there were bound to be dangers, so he would do his best to help Kane.
Rumbles.
Just as Kane was trying to figure out his next step, the forest began to tremble, and a gale of wind hit him with so much strength that it almost sent him flying away. The sauces of the gale came from what seemed to be the center of this place, and just as Kane focused on it, a wall of light appeared 100 meters behind him. Kane immediately moved away from the wall of light, and he noticed that it seemed to extend all over the forest's edge. A strange feeling appeared in Kane's heart when he focused on the wall of light. The idea appeared in his mind that he would leave this place if he touched it. From where that feeling came, Kane had no idea, but he would not act on instinct if he had the chance to prove it. His eyes narrowed as he attempted to use his free ego, and slowly a red force field emerged from his mind. Even though his body and astral wave were at the boundary of level 1, he could still use his ego wave. However, this one also weakened, and its range was barely a few dozen meters. Whatever the force weakening me is, it can affect my body, energy pool, and even ego wave, but cannot hinder the power of the absolute life form system or its chip module. Unfortunately, I cannot contact the exterior even if the module works perfectly. After that small analysis, Kane manipulated his ego wave and sent it into the wall of light. A piece of his red force field touched the phenomenon, and it was ripped from the main part of his ego wave, generating a sharp pain in his mind. He lost control of that piece of his ego wave, and that part of his willpower would crumble into nothing in seconds now that it was disconnected from the ego eternal matrix. Yet before disintegrating, that fragment of the red force field transmitted an image.
At least there is an exit.
In the image, Kane saw Blade Mountain sky, meaning there was a way out of this place. That calmed him a little since that discarded the idea this place was a slaughterhouse for young geniuses.
If that is the exit, then.
Kane turned to the center of the forest and assumed that he would find the path forward there, whatever that might be. He then glanced at the weapon and attempted to mobilize his astral wave into it. The machete could not only flawlessly blend with astral wave, but every ounce of energy Kane channeled into it was condensed and refined, leaving a very thin and sharp dark purple edge. Clearly, this was a melee weapon designed for astral wave cultivators, but Kane shook his head. No matter how good the machete was, it was not wise to use it if his mastery over it was lesser than that over his arms. Kane sent the machete into his space ring, but that proved to be a mistake as a sense of vertigo and nausea assaulted him the moment the weapon left his hand. It was so powerful that he fell to the ground. Luckily, those feelings faded once Kane took out the machete from his space ring and held it. Kane took a moment to regulate his breathing before looking at the machete again and understanding that he could not lose it no matter what. Those feelings of nausea and vertigo were so intense that he could not stand, much less fight, in that condition. This place demands me to fight using the weapon birthed from my essence. Although he did not like it, there was not much Kane could do about it, and he had to hold the machete with his right hand. He then began to move forward to the center of the forest. He had not advanced even 100 meters when his eyes narrowed as he glanced to the left. A creature appeared in the basic scan force field and slowly approached him. Kane continued walking forward as if he had not noticed it, and once the creature finally showed itself and lunged toward him from the back, he easily dodged the attack and hacked with his machete. The weapon landed right in the center of the creature's chest, leaving a deep cut and sending it flying away over 10 meters. A cry of rage and pain emerged from the creature. It had a humanoid body made of wood and flesh, with a single arm that held a large sword. Kane stared at the creature, and his eyes grew sharp as he saw that the flesh in it seemed to belong to a wave champion beast. So that is where they end up. Thousands of wave champion beasts entered the portal. Kane had wondered what happened to them, and it seemed that whatever was in control of this place used them as a component for the monsters like the one in front of him. The monster roared for a second time, generating a blast of life wave before charging toward Kane with absolute bloodlust in its eyes. Cain was able to dodge the monster's sod strikes with ease. They were both at the same cultivation level, but he could use his ego wave to enhance his speed of thought and reflexes. After a few minutes and verifying that the monster could only use melee strikes without any spell or skill, Cain decided to end it. He dodged the monster's sod before cutting its neck with the machete. The creature fell to the ground after having its head separated from its body and immediately began to tremble, unleashing a dark mist and withering. Cain jumped away and held his breath while using his wave cloak to prevent the mist from entering his body. He did not know what it was or if it was poisonous. However, while he did not want to be near it, the machete had other plans. It unleashed a suctioning force that drew the mist, leaving nothing left. Cain's eyes narrowed as he felt he had regained a little strength and focused on the weapon. It seems that the machete is fighting back the weakening force, and it grows more powerful by devouring the mist left by those sod monsters. After all the mist was gone, the sod monster's corpse crumbled into a pile of dust except for a small red orb. Current schedule, 7 chapters a week, 4/7. Bonus chapters. Over 400 Power Stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 Power Stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1200 Power Stones, 3 extra chapters. Redson World. Creator's thought. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 225, Developing Swordplay. 225, Developing Swordplay. Cain stared at the red orb and picked it up before sending his ego wave into it. He immediately noticed the immense blood vitality and pure life wave inside. The quantity was small, but the quality was superb. After making sure there were no other sod monsters around, Cain focused on the red orb and began to absorb its energy. Awe and shock appeared in Cain's eyes as he felt how the power purified his astral wave and tempered his flesh and blood. The effect of training with the red orb was better than anything Cain had used before. Not only was the energy overwhelmingly potent, but it was also very serene so he could use it non-stop. Unfortunately, Cain drained the red sphere in less than 3 minutes, and this one crumbled into dust, just like the red of the sod monster's body. Cain began to smile as a red light emerged in his eyes. The red spheres were what he needed to temper his body so he could rise above flawless marrow. I will need thousands of these red spheres to generate a qualitative improvement in my constitution. Killing intent emerged in Cain's eyes as he focused on the forest. Logic stated that the closer he got to the center, the more numerous and stronger the sod monster would be. Cain took a deep breath as he began to walk faster and faster into the forest. Despite his speed increasing, his presence grew weaker and weaker until it practically vanished. He was not going to wait for the sod monster's attacks and intended to be the hunter, killing those monsters so the machete would fight off the weakening force and collect the red spheres. If he was a normal cultivator, following that path would have been complicated, but he had the absolute life form system working as a scout. It did not take long for another sod monster to appear in the basic scan force field's range, and Cain did not hesitate before silently approaching the beast. Unlike the first sod monster that Cain battled, this one was nearly 3 meters tall, with huge arms holding 2 massive sods. Like wave champion beasts, it seemed that the monsters were not the same and had unique features. The sod monster was on a tree's branch, over 50 meters above the ground, waiting for the presence of a human to attack when suddenly, a figure appeared behind it. It raised one of its sods, stopping the machete from cutting its head, but that careless defense broke its stance, making it easy for Cain to send it crashing into the ground with a single kick.
Boom.
Cain saw how the sod monster stood up from the ground without much problem, but the fall broke one of its arms, and it could no longer hold 2 sods simultaneously. Its battle power equals that of a level 2 wave warrior, but while its defense and strength are formidable, it has very low agility. The sod monster roared with rage as it focused its life wave on its sod and legs before escalating the 3 in order to reach Cain. There is no wisdom in them, only killing intent. Cain shook his head at the foolish behavior of the sod monster. He charged his astral wave into his legs and jumped toward the monster. Taking advantage of the fact that it could not move freely with the sod buried into the tree's trunk, he cut its head off. The sod monster fell to the ground, and just like the other, a dark mist emerged from its decaying copse, leaving nothing more than a red sphere. Cain picked up the red sphere as the machete devoured the dark mist. He smiled at realizing that the amount of energy in this sphere was more than in the last one, reducing the amount he would need. For the next 2 weeks, Cain advanced into the forest, facing more and more sod monsters. Although all the monsters had humanoid forms, their battle styles varied. Some sod monsters use multiple sods, while others use only one. There were those that focused on speed, others on strength, and even those whose sod play focused solely on defense. Cain slowly regained his strength due to the dark mist the machete consumed, and his constitution and energy pool kept improving due to the constant use of red orbs. However, the fights were not getting easier since not only were the sod monsters growing more powerful, but their sod play began to evolve alongside their cultivation. 3 thin sods and a machete clashed again and again. The sods displayed much greater skills, but the one wielding a machete was faster and could predict the enemy's movements. Cain's eyes were extremely sharp as he deployed the full power of his ego wave and virtual sight to face the sod monster. There was not much difference between Cain's current strength and the monster's, yet it took everything he had not to lose. For the first time since he started this cultivation journey, Cain found himself pressured by an opponent with similar cultivation. 21-18. The reason was that Cain could not let go of the machete, allowing him only to use one arm free, and that the sod monster displayed truly superb sod play. Cain saw how those sods could change from incredibly fast to immensely strong, and every attack he used was either blocked or redirected. If it weren't for his ego wave improving his speed of thought, he would have been forced to run away a long time ago. A sharp light appeared in Cain's eyes as he pulled back to avoid the sod monster from cutting his neck. He then took a deep breath and pushed his focus to the limit in order to unleash his secondary energy pool. Blood energy was not accessible to Cain when he first appeared in the forest, but after strengthening the machete over the last few weeks, he was able to unleash a very small amount of it. Cain generated a small blast of blood lightning that covered his arms and machete, allowing him to hack toward the sod monster with so much strength that he pushed the 3 sods out of his way before severing. The machete made a diagonal cut on the sod monster's chest, splitting this one in 2 and killing it. Cain did not feel happy when he saw the sod monster's death. He had to deploy a greater cultivation stage than the enemy to defeat a single monster, which meant that he could not advance deeper. He stared at the machete, and since he could not stop holding it, there was only one real path forward. I need to learn how to use this weapon. That thought appeared with the notion that those who had already mastered the sod had a serious advantage in this place. It was a problem considering that one of Cain's enemies showed immense dexterity with a broadsword. Over the next few days, Cain no longer advanced deeper and instead chose to fight sod monster strong enough to push him, but not so much that he could not divide his attention. The battles took a while as he no longer fought with the intent of just killing the sod monsters, but learning from their sod play. The absolute life form system also analyzed all that Cain saw and learned. Although the focus was on figuring out a way to handle the weakening force, developing sod play took less than 5% of its computational power. In only 3 days, Cain's domain over the machete went from a complete lack of it to one that did not fall too much behind his control over his own arm. Cain's sod play focused on speed and strength, exploiting the enemy's blind spots and openings to land decisive strikes. Every strike sought to sever limbs and leave deep cuts that reached the internal organs. After those few days of training, Cain faced another sod monster that was as powerful as the one welding 3 weapons. It had 2 large sods and a very thin body that seemed to exude speed. The sod monster flashed at Cain and hacked from above and to the right, aiming at the young man's head and waist. Just as those sods were about to reach their target, Cain used his machete to push one away and block the other. Next, he twisted his machete in a small circle, cutting the sod monster's wrist and severing that hand. Now that the machete was no longer a handicap and could use it as intended, Cain became much more powerful. The sod monster unleashed a roar of pain of rage as it hacked with his remaining hand, but Kane counted it. Kane's machete flashed toward the left but did not aim at the sod.
AWWWWWWWW.
The sod monster screamed with greater strength this time since the machete cut his elbows, severing his only arm left. It could not yell for much longer as the machete separated its head from the rest of its body. Current schedule: 7 chapters a week. 5/7. Bonus chapters: over 400 Power Stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 Power Stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1200 Power Stones, 3 extra chapters. Redson World. Creators thought. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 226, Temporary Alliance. 226, Temporary Alliance. Kane and a sod monster with a single arm were fighting on top of a very thin tree branch. The human and the monster displayed superb footwork, and their weapons clashed at an impressive speed. Despite only having a single arm, the sod monster could manipulate its weapon better than any of the monsters Kane had faced before, and was able to blend attack and defense flawlessly. Kane took a step back just in time to avoid a sod from cutting his neck, and then he immediately moved forward, hacking with his machete. The battle was extremely intense and pushed him to his limits, but that was precisely the type of training that allowed him to advance so fast. After a month inside the forest, Kane's cultivation returned to the start of level 4, and he unleashed level 6 battle power thanks to his blood energy and ego wave. His mastery over the machete grew with every battle, and it was reaching the point that he felt extremely comfortable with the weapon by his side. That was just the improvement in terms of his machete's ability to shield him from the weakening foss. Kane's cultivation had undergone a terrific refinement thanks to the red orbs, with his astral wave reaching an exceptionally pure state. As for the improvement in his constitution, it was hard to tell for sure, but Kane was confident that his next marrow washing would be extremely potent. A sharp light appeared in Kane's eyes when the machete and the sod monster's weapon clashed, and neither could push the other back. He stomped the tree's branch with his feet, breaking the pot in front of him and sending the monster falling to the ground. While the sod monster was still midair, Kane lunged toward it at full speed and hacked with so much strength that it split it in two. Dark mist emerged from the copse and was devoured by Kane's machete as he took the red orb and deposited it into his space ring. He had killed so many of these monsters that consuming the red orbs directly after a fight was no longer productive. The battle was hard but did not leave Kane exhausted, so he was ready to advance further when a figure appeared at the edge of the basic scan force field, and it was not a sod monster. Kane focused on that place for a moment, and after some thinking, he went forward. A young man with golden hair fought a massive sod monster that held a sod nearly as large as its body. Every swing of the bastard sod generated small gales due to its power, but the young man maintained a safe distance. The weapon in the young man's hand was not exactly a sod, as it would be better to call it a blade due to its form. It was not that large and thin, granting it great speed, but also fragility. Luckily, that was not a problem due to the young man's battle style. Every time the young man waved his blade, arcs of golden light would emerge from it and flash at immense speed toward the sod monster. The sod monster was able to shatter most of the arcs of golden light, but some managed to reach its body, leaving deep wounds. A cry of rage and pain emerged from the sod monster as it charged toward the young man, ready to split this one from the head down. The young man saw the wild charge of the sod monster, and his essence wave burst to its limit, making a golden light cover his entire body. Instead of moving back, he pushed his focus to its limit and waited. Just as the sod monster appeared by his side and hacked down toward his head, he took a single step to the side, using his blade to hit the bastard sod's upper edge and burying it into the ground. The bastard sod nearly vanished into the ground due to its potency, temporarily immobilizing the sod monster, since these creatures could not let go of their weapons. After that, the young man's golden light exploded with even greater power and began slashing at the sod monster with a shocking speed. All the blade strikes did not only cut, since they also unleashed arcs of golden light, making the wounds extremely deep. The young man's battle style displayed the reason why calling essence cultivators simply magic casters would be a grave mistake. One final roar of pain and rage emerged from the sod monster as the blade and arcs of light cut its body to pieces. A smile appeared on the young man after killing the sod monster and seeing the vast amount of dark mist entering his blade. Just as he was about to grab the red orb left behind by the monster, a hand touched his shoulder. The young man's eyes widened when he realized that someone had managed to stand right behind him, and he did not notice it until that person made contact. He immediately made his essence wave explode with all its power, flashing forward before turning around and sending a barrage of arcs of golden light. Those arcs of golden light were sent in a hurry, but they had great power. Yet, a machete bathed in blood lightning shattered all of them with a single movement.
Cain. Hello, Anthony.
The first person that Cain saw inside the dimension was no other than the first soldier to become a wave champion among the thousands that reached Blade Mountain. Cain suspected that dozens, if not hundreds, of people had reached this dimension, but he had not seen anyone before since he advanced too fast. His delay due to his swordplay training must have been the reason some of the strongest were catching up to him. Anthony put his guard up when he saw Cain. They were in a different dimension, and there was no way to communicate with the outside world, so the rules and codes of the Empire mattered very little at this point. However, he was able to relax when he remembered that shoulder tap and realized that if Cain had wanted to harm him, that machete would have cut his head off.
Temporary alliance.
Anthony proposed something that was common knowledge for all cultivators across the entire world, especially humans that were known for their greed. Individuals could form a temporary alliance during the search for treasures. It was an unwritten rule that they would look after each other during the search, doing their best to protect the other. However, that would stop the moment they found the treasure, and at that point, they would have to decide how to advance. Cain showed a small smile as he heard that and nodded. Anthony showed a battle power at peak level 5 and would be of help in the ensuing battles. Now that everything was in order, Anthony took the red orb before adopting a meditative position and began cultivating to restore his strength.
Do you have any insight about this place?
Cain asked while looking around, tactically unleashing his ego wave, so Anthony would not question his ability to perceive the surroundings.
Although I come from noble family, my father was only a viscount, so our knowledge about the collapsing lightning sector is very limited. However, I noticed that the light wall surrounding this place was advancing.
Cain was a little surprised to hear the last part. The forest was so full of trees, and he had advanced so much that he could no longer see the wall of light. It seemed there was a time limit to reach the forest center.
How fast? It is hard to tell, but from what I saw, it should reach this place in around 10 days.
Learning that his advancing speed was enough to leave the wall of light far behind relaxed Cain. That way, he would not have to sacrifice his sword training to avoid being expelled from the dimension.
What about you?
Now it was Anthony's time to ask Cain about his understanding of this place.
I don't know much other than it seems to be a natural inheritance, since it communicates to us through feelings instead of actual words. Also, touching the wall of light will take you out of this dimension and back to the real world.
Anthony was surprised to learn that he could leave this place by simply touching the wall of light, and when he wondered how Cain managed to figure it out, he looked at the red force field that moved around him.
Our next step should be making our way into the center of the forest, but slowly and focusing on developing our swordplay. There must be a reason why the dimension forces us to use the swords at all times.
Anthony agreed with Cain's strategy. Simply rushing forward and ignoring their weapon would be a dire mistake.
By the way, before we move forward, I need to ask, how many people have you killed?
Anthony was surprised by that question and could see in Cain's eyes that this one needed an answer. Current schedule, 7 chapters a week, 6/7. Bonus chapters. Over 400 Power Stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 Power Stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1,200 Power Stones, 3 extra chapters. Redson World. Creator's thought. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 227 Fight with Students. 227 Fight with Students. Anthony stared at Kane for a moment before shaking his head. He had taken part in all kinds of missions, including capturing criminals, but never was he forced to take a life. Kane was a little surprised. He found it hard to believe that Anthony had reached this far without having to murder someone, but he also saw that this one was telling the truth.
Brat, don't use yourself as a frame for what is common.
Apex's voice echoed inside Kane's mind, making him release a slight chuckle before sighing. Taking a life had become a very normal thing for him, especially after those months inside the dream of his past life in the awakening of his alter ego. Am I becoming more like my previous life, insensible to everything? Kane did not lose too much time on those thoughts and simply shook his head.
When we meet other people, follow my lead and do not hesitate.
Anthony's eyes grew sharp as he understood the meaning behind those words and nodded. They were in a separate dimension, full of people seeking to obtain whatever treasure was inside. He was not naive enough to think that everything could be solved with words. Now that was out of the way, and after Anthony recovered enough energy, the duo flashed toward the center of the forest. Kane and Anthony spent the next 2 weeks going from one battle to another. The duo advanced quickly, but not as fast as they could since they deliberately prolonged certain fights for hours when finding a sod monster with a sod play that they could learn from. Right now, Kane and Anthony were fighting against a 3-meter-tall sod monster that held a single longsword between its hands. Despite its massive size, the monster moved its body and waved its sword phenomenally fast. A rain of small arcs of light fell to the sod monster, but this one was able to shatter all of them with a single wave of its sword, and without losing momentum, it twisted its body and parried a machete bathed in blood lightning that sought to cut its head off. Kane frowned as he saw how the sod monster easily pushed him back, and things only grew more dire as this one chased after him. He managed to dodge most of the sod strikes, but some managed to reach him and cut past his armor and into his skin. None of those wounds were deadly or weakened his battle power, but everything could change if he made a single mistake. Kane endured that barrage for 30 seconds, and his eyes grew sharp as a new shower of arcs of light fell from the sky above the sod monster. The sod monster unleashed a powerful strike that sent Kane flying away before shattering all the arcs of light above its head. That was supposed to be it, but there was a reason why Anthony took 30 seconds to unleash that attack. The broken pieces of the arcs of light became sharp needles that flashed toward the sod monster from all directions at speed this one could not avoid or block. The sod monster could only raise its arms to defend its head as the rain of light needles pierced into its body. Unfortunately for the monster, as it did that, Kane appeared right in front of it and hacked with all his strength, severing its right leg off. A cry of rage and pain emerged from the sod monster after losing its leg and falling to the ground. Now that it could not adopt a battle stance, it took less than 3 minutes for Kane and Anthony to destroy the monster's head. Great quantities of dark mist emerged from the sod monster's copse, and both the machete and blade unleashed a suctioning power, devouring as much as they could before there was nothing left. Kane picked up the red orb and stored it in his space ring. He and Anthony had come to an arrangement that they would divide the orbs equally, and this one was his. The duo moved away from the battlefield, and after finding a place empty of all enemies, they began to restore their energy. Just as they were ready to move again, Kane's eyes narrowed as he turned to the south. Anthony frowned as he saw that, and the next second, Kane spoke in his mind using Ego Wave. The words he heard surprised him, and the next second, a sharp light appeared in his eyes as he nodded. Kane and Anthony rose from the tree branch they were in and began to move to the south, in the opposite direction from the center of the forest. The reason for their movement became clear after a few minutes when 2 men appeared in their sight. They were members of the student force. By what Anthony remembered, both were level 9 in the outside world. None of them would be a problem for him, a mighty wave champion, but things were different in this dimension where everybody's cultivation had been suppressed. Kane discarded the notion of a diplomatic approach from the beginning, as he did not intend to waste his time with scions if there was a better way to find what they knew. Antony saw how Kane suddenly vanished, but was not concerned since this was part of the plan. His mind became focused as he tightened the grip on his sword, and before the duo could find his presence, he unleashed a barrage of arcs of light.
What the? Look out!
The attack took the student by surprise. Both made their wave cloak burst at full power before using their skills to defend. A Bach armor covered one of the students, making him resemble a large Trent as he raised his bastard sword and used it as a shield to defend his head and vital organs. On the other hand, the second student waved his sword, generating streams of water around his body that deflected some of the arcs of light. Both of them could resist the attack, but there were still deep wounds on their arms and legs since they focused on protecting their heads and upper body.
It is Antony. Get him.
Rage and killing intent burst from the eyes of both students as they attacked with all they had the instant they saw Antony on a tree branch. The astral cultivator flashed at full speed toward Antony, making his armor bulkier. Antony was ready to unleash a barrage of strikes toward the Trent-like student, but he was forced to focus on the jets of water fired in his direction. The essence cultivator aimed his sword as if this one was a cannon, concentrating large amounts of water into the blade before firing thin jets of water that could make a hole in a tree. Antony was able to neutralize those jets with his arcs of light. The distraction fulfilled its purpose since the astral cultivator was about to jump toward his tree branch. A melee fight with the Trent-like student would not be wise, so Antony jumped out of the branch. In midair, he sent a sharp arc of light that cut the branch just as the astral cultivator landed on it, making this one fall to the ground as well. The essence cultivator intended to fire water jets toward Antony while this one was midair, but his partner got in the way and had to attack with much slower streams. Antony saw how the water streams moved around the astral cultivator and made their way toward him, but did not grow worried as his arcs of light easily destroyed them. The astral cultivator focused his wave on his legs, so the moment he touched the ground, he could flash toward Antony at a shocking speed. Antony had already predicted that but did not move away, and as the bastard sword came his way, he dodged to the side with ease before unleashing a flurry of blade cuts that shattered the Bach armor. The astral cultivator was taken by surprise by the melee attack and was able to push Antony away by waving his bastard sword. But the damage he endured was too much since there was not a part of his body that was not bleeding.
Marlon, help me.
Now that the battle had become too dangerous, the astral cultivator shouted for his friend to come by his side so that this one could cover their retreat and they could escape. When no answer came to his plea, an ominous feeling appeared in the astral cultivator's heart, and he turned his eyes away from Antony, only to see how a figure bathed in red lightning held Marlon by the neck and suffocated him.
Kane.
An overwhelming fear appeared in the heart of the astral cultivator when he realized that one of the worst nightmares of the student Foss had come for him.
HMPH, where are you looking?
The astral cultivator heard a sneer in front of him before a barrage of arcs of light landed point blank on his chest. Current schedule, 7 chapters a week. 7/7. Bonus chapters. Over 400 power stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 power stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1,200 power stones, 3 extra chapters. Redson World. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 228, Bloodshed. 228 Bloodshed. Marlon slowly opened his eyes, and there was a confused expression on his face as he looked around, trying to figure out what just happened. The last thing he remembered was 2 red eyes and then losing consciousness due to suffocation. He looked down and saw his hands and legs tied up, but the sword was still in his hands. The rope around Marlon's hands and legs was made of special flexible steel, so he could not easily break out of it.
Chris.
Marlon shouted when he noticed his comrade was by his side, and fear emerged in his heart when he saw the dozens of deep cuts on this one. Chris turned to the side and stared at Marlon, but a voice interrupted them before he could say a word.
I was getting bored. Now that the two of you are awake, we can start.
Marlon and Chris turned to their left and saw Kane walking toward them. They also noticed Anthony resting against a tree, but this one seemed to have no interest in them. Anthony knew that Kane was more suited to handle this type of situation, so he just watched. Kane's eyes glowed with red light as the power of this ego wave burst, and he sent it to the duo's minds. Chris and Marlon trembled for a second, and their eyes almost lost focus, but they were able to resist. A flash of pain appeared on Kane's face as the duo managed to resist his hypnosis. He was a 5-star elementary hypnosis master, and the Scions had no overwhelming willpower, so the hypnosis should have worked. Unfortunately for Kane, this dimension weakened his ego wave but did not affect people's mental defenses.
I guess we will have to do it the hard way.
Chris could not stop trembling as the shadow Kane cast over his heart was too great, but Marlon was different.
Who do you think you are to tide me? I am the son of Marquis Galadriel.
Marlon was the only son of a Marquis, a mighty wave king who had pampered him all his life. No matter how great the trouble he got in, his father would always make all go away. That upbringing made Marlon think there was nothing he could not do as long as the victims had a lower background. 21.
Untie me now, and I will pardon this.
Marlon could not finish his sentence as Kane grabbed him by the chest and began to strike his face. Kane showed nothing as he punched Marlon repeatedly, breaking the bones on the face of the Scion and making it bloody. Even when the Scion could no longer breathe due to the broken bones and blood, Kane did not stop.
Stop, you are going to kill him.
Chris finally could not hold on anymore and shouted, but the next second he wished he had kept his mouth shut as Kane turned toward him. Those red eyes and bloody fists terrified him so much he could not stop trembling. Kane took out a green capsule from his space ring and injected it into Marlon's neck, making the body of the young Scion spam before slowly healing.
It will take around 10 minutes for him to regain the ability to speak. If you have not answered all my questions by then, I will have to make a lesson out of you so that your friend knows that I am serious.
Chris' eyes widened when he heard that, and the idea he would suffer an even worse punishment than Marlon terrified him.
I will tell you all you want to know.
Kane's assassination training also included intelligence gathering and psychological torture, so breaking down a couple of Scions was a piece of cake. He asked many questions to Chris, and this one could not answer them fast enough. Ultimately, Kane and Anthony got all the intel they could possibly need from Chris, and they could not help but frown at what they just learned. Chris and Marlon were part of a larger team led by Amos. Unlike Kane, Amos could promise people that followed him great rewards using his background, so he formed a group with 12 powerful cultivators around him. Amos sent the duo to scout the surroundings with the sole purpose of finding other humans. It was clear to Kane that the young master from the Hellblazer family was not interested in a fair competition and planned to squash it down as soon as possible. Thanks to Chris, Kane learned the name and battle power of all the people in Amos' group. Once the interrogation was over, the idea of killing the Duke crossed Kane's mind, but he soon shook his head. While killing people he considered evil was extremely easy, he saw himself as a hero and would not go around killing everybody that got in his way. Kane took out the 2 Scion swords and their space rings, making them so weak they could not even talk.
If you remain here, the Wall of Light will eventually send you out. You could try to return to Amos, but there is a 99% chance you will die at the hands of a sword monster. Your choice.
Kane did not wait to see the expression on the Duke's faces, and he glanced toward Anthony before both flashed out of that place. Anthony's eyes narrowed as he saw the direction that Kane took was precisely the one that Chris told them Amos' group was.
Are you planning on fighting them?
Although Anthony and Kane worked very well together and displayed great battle power, there was no way they could handle Amos and another 10 Scions.
We will first perform some reconnaissance. Amos's group is dangerous, so we must gather more information about them. There is also the task that man gave about searching for other humans, which means that some people we know might be in danger, especially a friend of mine. We will decide how to proceed once we have enough information.
Kane did not hide the emotional factor of his decision, but he deployed an objective approach to the problem that was Amos. Antony considered things for a moment before nodding. He would not jump into a suicidal battle just because Cain said so, but he would support this one if the decision made sense. The duo had advanced for less than half an hour when Cain's eyes grew sharp as he detected 3 people. One of them was running, and the other 2 were chasing. The one running was no other than Oren, and the ones chasing her were Karl and Jota. The young woman displayed superb footwork, dodging all the attacks that came her way, but a large scotched cut on her left leg and right arm hindered her speed. Karl and Jota showed fierce smiles as they pushed their astral wave to their peak, closing the distance toward Oren. Jota appeared right behind Oren, thanks to the metal pipes on his back, impulsing his body forward. His smile grew vicious as he raised his sword and hacked toward Oren's back.
Boom.
Before Jota's arm could descend, a shock wave echoed across the forest, and a red flash propelled toward the trio at a shocking speed. The next thing everybody saw was an arm covered in rock armor holding a long sword flying away.
H.
Jota unleashed a scream of unbearable pain as a machete just cut off his right arm, and the next second, a sense of nausea and vertigo pushed him to the ground since he no longer held his sword. Karl's eyes widened as he saw that, and all the fierceness in his heart vanished, replaced by an immense fear when he saw 2 red eyes focusing on him.
Wait.
Karl could not say anything else before Cain flashed forward and began to strike. The Scion defended himself but was no match for Cain, and in less than 10 seconds, the machete severed his right wrist, making a hand and sword fall to the ground. Like Jota, Karl unleashed a scream of pain before the weakness of losing his sword threw him to the ground. Antony appeared on the battlefield once all was over. He had to move as fast as possible, but Cain was faster. Just as the duo turned toward Oren and were about to ask if she needed help to recover, the women spoke.
There is no time to lose. Amos' team ambushed mine. I escaped under William's command to find help, but these 2 followed me.
Oren did not lose time, going straight to the point, and the expression on her face made clear the urgency of the matter. Antony frowned when he heard that, and he knew that they needed to act fast.
How do we handle them?
Antony had just finished his question when he saw Cain cut Karl's head off before flashing toward Jota and doing the same to this one. Current schedule, 7 chapters a week. 1/7. Bonus chapters. Over 400 Power Stones, 1 extra episode number. Over 800 Power Stones, 2 extra chapters. Over 1,200 Power Stones, 3 extra chapters. Redson World. Creators thought. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 229, Turning the Tables. Cain did not wait for a second or explain his ruthless behavior to the duo as he starred the space rings of Karl and Jota before picking Oren and putting the women on his back.
Where?
Oren was a little taken aback by the sudden bloodshed. Still, as someone who took the assassination military specialization, she could focus her mind in a second.
6 o'clock, 9,000 meters.
Cain's blood lightning burst with power as he flashed in that direction. Antony did not remain behind, using his light armor to follow the duo.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
Elemental explosions and shock waves echoed across the forest as 9 young men with university marks fought against a group of 6 soldiers. 2 long swords clashed repeatedly in the center of the battlefield, one bathed in explosive flames and the other in cold energy. Amos and William fought with all they had, using every ounce of energy and strength in their bodies to finish the other. There was no need to hide the killing intent in their hearts, since things had escalated beyond the point they could achieve a peaceful outcome. Although the battle between Amos and William was the mightiest, the ones around them were just as spectacular, especially one of 2 young men fighting with golden and red fire. Levi used all his power to face Joseph, the 2nd strongest student from Hellblazer University. Neither could overcome the other, and just like Amos and William, their battle reached an impasse. The problem for the soldiers was that while they did not fall behind in terms of average individual power, The Scions had the numerical advantage. The wounds on the soldiers keep growing, and it will only be a matter of time before they would crumble.
Orders.
William's eyes narrowed when he heard that scream, and saw that one of the soldiers was losing a hand and pulling back to not lose his life as well.
Bastard, you will pay dearly for this crime once we leave the dimension. What are you talking about? All of you perished under the hands of the sword monsters. That is what we saw and what everybody in the Empire will believe.
Amos mocked William as he wielded his sword with more and more strength, unleashing powerful blasts of flames with each impact. The young man from the Hellblazer family knew very well what would happen if the Imperial Lightning Fort learned about his ambush of soldiers, which is why he would not leave anyone alive.
You should have handed over that boy. Maybe then you could have kept your life. HMPH, if I were to hand over my comrades just because some piece of shit says so, then I will be no better than the pigs of the Hellblazer family.
William's eyes glowed with silver light for a second as he uttered those words. He was the kind of man that would follow his heart and would rather die with his head high than live on his knees. Amos' face twisted with fury when he heard how William dared to refer to members of the Hellblazer family as pigs.
You lowly soldier, how dare you speak of the great Hellblazer family like that? I will burn your filthy tongue.
Amos' reaction might seem a little over the top for someone so calm as him, but he faced a powerful indoctrination since birth, making the Hellblazer family's honor something no one could challenge. William's sword pierced forward, but Amos pushed forward instead of moving back, allowing the blade to penetrate his shoulder and granting him the chance to strike his enemy in the chest. William clenched his teeth as he redirected as much of his astral wave as he could into his chest before Amos' sword clashed with it, leaving a deep cut and triggering an explosion that sent him flying away.
Boom.
The rest of the soldiers noticed that, but they could barely keep the students at bay, much less render someone else assistance, so there was nothing they could do to help William. Amos showed a fierce smile as he saw William clash against a large tree with a deep wound on the chest. That last attack was risky, but allowed him to land a decisive blow, and now it was time to end the battle. Although he could no longer use his right arm due to the hole in his shoulder and the ice energy freezing his muscles, his mastery over the sword was high enough to wield it with his left arm.
Dies.
Amos flashed forward, ready to give William the final blow, taking advantage of this one being too weak to fight back.
Boom.
However, just as he was midway, a shock wave echoed across the forest, and Amos' eyes widened as his instincts began to scream danger. The scion of the Hellblazer family's instincts and battle awareness was much better than those of Jota, and he was able to twist his body and put his sword in the path of the machete aiming at his neck.
Boom.
A massive blast of fire and lightning was triggered by the clash of the machete and sword, and it was Amos' time to be sent flying away since the power behind the machete was too much for him to handle with that feeble defense. Kane's figure became visible the next second, and the red force field overflowed the battlefield the next second, pressuring all the students' minds. His eyes grew sharp as he analyzed the battlefield and the state of the soldiers and students.
Orin, go guard William. Anthony, help the Lumia and the others.
Antony and Orin reached the battlefield the next second, and the duo nodded toward Kane before flashing to their respective targets. Kane was enough to make things hard for the students, but now that Antony and Orin were also present, their numerical advantage was almost gone. Amos was able to rise from the ground very fast, and rage appeared in his heart as he saw Kane and the other two reaching the battlefield just as he was ready to exterminate all the soldiers. That feeling grew stronger when he noticed how Kane signaled for Orin and Antony to help the other as if he was not a threat. However, Amos did not allow that emotion to get the best of him, and he took a deep breath and calmed his heart. Kane noticed the change in Amos, and the sense of danger he felt from the scion grew. Those who lost themselves in their rage were easy to overcome, and those who managed to remain calm in a precarious situation were the truly dangerous ones.
What happened with Jota and Carl?
Amos had sent the duo after Orin after wounding the girl, and they should have been more than powerful enough to handle her. Yet, Orin appeared with Kane, so the outcome of those two could not have been good.
The same thing that will happen to you.
Kane's voice was cold as the blood lightning burst with power, and he calmly walked forward.
HMPH, you are underestimating me.
Powerful flames covered Amos' body, burning the cold energy that froze the muscles on his right shoulder, allowing him to hold his sword with both hands.
I estimate you just fine.
Kane's voice had not faded when he flashed toward Amos and began hacking with his machete. Amos was able to follow those attacks with his eyes as he had regained a lot of his previous strength, but Kane's swordplay beastly surpassed him. That, plus the wounds on his body, pushed him into a defensive stance he could not escape. The situation around the battlefield took a large turn since Antony's power helped the soldiers surpass the students by a slight margin. Levi relaxed now that the rest of the soldiers were fine and could focus on Joseph, slowly pushing back this one with his golden flames. Amos saw that, but there was nothing he could do. He could barely move as Kane kept him pinned into a specific part of the battlefield. After a few minutes, wounds started to appear on the students as Antony's attacks were too fast and unpredictable for them, and even Joseph was beginning to lose ground against Levi.
Pull back.
Amos issued that order, wanting to leave this battlefield before they suffered wounds that could diminish their battle power. He was ready to use all his power to push Kane away since he believed this one would cling to him, but things did not go that way. As soon as Amos attempted to escape, Kane pulled back, leaving him alone. Confusion briefly filled the Scion's mind, but then he understood Kane's goal.
Look out.
Joseph heard Amos' voice, but he could not lose focus as Levi attacked with a nearly suicidal might once he attempted to move away, not allowing his mind to concentrate on anything else. That was a grave mistake, since Joseph only perceived the machete cutting his neck when it was too late. Redson World. Sai Engai C let 1E7, a NG let 1B0, let 1EDD, IT let 1E1. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 230, Merciless, I. Joseph's eyes were full of disbelief as his mind failed to process when the machete separated his head from the rest of his body. Kane grabbed the head midair and used his machete to pierce the corpse, using the blood refinement art to devour the blood inside as he stared at Amos and the other students.
None of you will be leaving.
A red force field full of killing intent rushed toward the students and covered them. Since the other party attacked them and attempted to take their life, there was no reason why he would let them escape. Although Kane's brutality and slaughter intent surprised the soldiers, since things escalated to this point, with Joseph already dead, it was better to go all the way. Amos clenched his teeth when he saw that, and a sharp light appeared in his eyes when he saw how the rest of the students behaved. If they were ready to fight with their life on the line, they would have a chance, but Joseph's horrific death already broke their fighting spirit. There was no way Amos would fight to the death, and he was ready to escape, leaving the rest of the students that saw him as a leader to their luck. However, before Amos or Kane could make a move, a voice emerged from the trees.
Such merciless and killing intent. You really do honor your military code name, Saint of Killers. However, I cannot let you kill so many promising stars from the Empire.
A man emerged from the trees and was not alone since a young woman was beside him. Kane's face did not change because he had already perceived that man's presence thanks to his basic scan force field. The one who spoke was no other than Dominic, and he was not alone since Cynthia was by his side. The power dynamic changed once again. Cynthia's power was so little no one bothered with her, but Dominic's aura was powerful and sharp, not to mention that the young man's mastery over the sword should be the greatest of everybody present. Kane focused on the sword in Dominic's right hand, and it was a bastard sword, very similar to the one the Scion used in the real world. His mastery over the machete was good, but he was not so arrogant as to think he could surpass the swordplay of someone that dedicated his life to it. Only after thoroughly analyzing Dominic did Kane's eyes turn toward the young woman, and he could see fear in her eyes. The fact she was here was already strange since she was a level 3 wave warrior and not a very talented one. Dominic showed a small smile as he saw Kane focus on Cynthia, and then he put his hand over the woman's shoulder, making her tremble.
I learned there that you were fond of this little girl, and it seems I was not wrong.
Dominic walked to the ground of students with Cynthia by his side, and on the way, he glanced at Amos before positioning himself at the lead. A flash of rage appeared in Amos' eyes when he saw Dominic's behavior. There was no doubt in his heart that the man saw the battle, but only chose to intervene now that his position as leader was no longer stable. Although the Hellblazers' scion would have wanted to push Dominic in the face, he knew how to control his emotions, and no matter how much he hated it, they needed this one to face the catastrophic threat that was Cain. Dominic knew there was nothing Amos could do right now and no longer focused on this one, since there was much greater prey in front of him. He did not underestimate Cain, and that was why he returned to the encampment for Cynthia instead of immediately flashing toward the portal. The scion took a deep breath, and the focus on his eyes reached its limit as he prepared for a crucial clash of schemes.
The goal of this dimension is not to kill each other but those monsters, so I don't see why we should keep fighting like this.
Dominic spoke calmly, but that did not stop him from tightening his grip around Cynthia's shoulder, making an expression of pain appear on her face. Cain's eyes grew colder as the red light burst with even greater power. His face was emotionless, but the red force field covering the battlefield began to express a monstrous killing intent.
Now that you are no longer hiding, the risk-reward ratio of killing all of you is no longer worth it. You can leave, but she must remain with me.
A complicated expression appeared on Cynthia's face when she heard Cain's words. There was a mixture of happiness and remorse. Antony, William, Oren, and other soldiers turned toward Cain when they heard that. It was clear by Dominic's words and Cain's behavior that the young woman was not just a simple acquaintance. Dominic's smile grew wider as he heard that. His grip on Cynthia's shoulder grew stronger.
Crack.
Students and soldiers could hear bone-cracking sounds emerging from Cynthia's shoulders due to the pressure of Dominic's grip.
You really care about her. Did she not make a fool out of you and spent the last year you two were together bullying you and fooling around with other men?
The soldiers and students were surprised to hear that, but Cain's face did not change and continued showing no emotion. Dominic's eyes narrowed as he could not see Cain's mind or predict anything of this one, so he went even further with his words.
You know, we originally had plans to trick you. This girl was more than ready to play with you, following my commands, but after seeing you in battle, I understood that such a cliché like that would never work on someone like you. She begged me to give her a chance to prove herself, saying that you would fall so madly in love that there would be nothing she could not make you do. Of course, I did not believe it and threw her away with the other cultivation furnaces.
A sense of utter shock affected the mind of everybody hearing Dominic's words, along with a numbing confusion. If he wanted to use Cynthia as a hostage, there was no sense in revealing the young woman's nefarious and shameless behavior. However, Cain's reaction shook them even more.
I figure that you had something like that planned the moment I saw her for the first time among the students. Nevertheless, my nature is that of a hero, and I will not save those I can, even if they are not worth it.
Cynthia's eyes began tearing as their guilt, shame, and remorse grew stronger after hearing those words. The reaction of the student was different, with many of them sneering. Some even began to whisper, wondering how they were so afraid of a man with such a weak mentality. The soldiers did not dare to show such contempt, but it was clear they were not fond of that sort of behavior in a leader. Still, since it did not cost them anything, none would interfere with Cain's saving Cynthia. However, things would never be so easy with Dominic taking the lead.
I don't intend to fight since that would not be counterproductive, but just handing her over because you say so doesn't seem fine. You took the life of a valuable member of our group, so you must pay for it. Hand over all your red orbs and return Joseph's space ring.
Cain's eyes grew colder, and its red light shone with a ferocious might, indicating just how much rage was in his heart right now. Still, he deposited his red orbs in Joseph's space ring and walked forward.
Don't move.
Dominic did not allow Cain to take more than a single step before shouting, raising his sword. He would not let such a powerful astral cultivator get in striking distance. Cain's eyes narrowed, but he did not challenge Dominic's words.
What you propose? There is a distance of 200 meters between us. Leave your sword 50 meters ahead, and then I will release Cynthia. You will throw the space ring to me when she reaches the sword. If you don't do it, I will send a barrage of wind blades forward, killing her.
Kane stared at Dominic for a moment and did not accept immediately, but once the Scion began to tighten the grip on Cynthi's shoulder, he sighed before nodding. Antony and the rest of the soldiers frowned when they saw that. Letting go of his sword would leave Kane vulnerable, jeopardizing all their lives. Unfortunately for the soldiers, it did not seem that Kane could see the dangers, and he lunged his machete, making it land 50 meters ahead. Immediately, his face grew pale, and it seemed there was little to no strength left in his body. Dominic focused on Kane for a few seconds before finally letting go of Cynthia. The moment she was free, the young woman immediately walked forward, and the only reason she did not run seemed to be her fear of Dominic. Once Cynthia reached the machete buried in the ground, Kane used what little strength was in his body to throw the space ring toward Dominic. Cynthia began to walk faster and faster past that point, and in the last 10 meters, she almost jumped toward Kane, landing on the chest of this one. The instant Cynthia reached Kane's embrace, a poisonous greed replaced the fear in her eyes, and a small sword in the form of a dagger emerged from her sleeve. Blood painted the ground the next second. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.